this is the Saturday night, and I'm just full freak out. I'm watching all these YouTube videos like, how do you fight stage fright? And it's nothing's really helping, And I was trying to figure out what in the world is causing this. Like, what is the root issue that I'm having with stage fright, right? And so I'm watching that Ryan Reynolds movie where he's the stuntman, right? And he's in this fight with another character. And he's like, you have to eat carbs. Your brain runs on glucose. I'm sitting there, I look at my wife. I was like, is that my problem? I'm not eating enough carbs and sugar. And so therefore I'm not getting enough fuel in my brain, which is causing me to mess up, which is making me nervous about messing up. And so, Josh, I got to tell you, it's just another problem that can be solved by cookies.
Thank you for joining me on the Eyes Up podcast with Joshua Lutz. I am Joshua Lutz, and I have here with me Matt Reviere, who is a sideman for Carrie Underwood, and he has really run the gamut, playing for a lot of excellent artists. Matt, thank you so much for your time, man.
Josh, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man, it's a blast. Like we got together for coffee the other day, and it's just, we share a lot of the same passions for music, for, being a father, taking care of the family. I'm just grateful, man. I'm grateful that you have set aside some time. So, Carrie Underwood, dude, I mean, we can just start right there. Like, take me back to when you first got that call and you're like, oh, okay, this looks like it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. So I kind of joke around and say that I'm the official guitar player of American Idol because I've played with a lot of American Idol artists through the years. I just seem to kind of end up in that world. I'm very thankful that that show exists. The first idol that I had played with was Danny Goki when he was doing country music. And you had played with Danny Goki when he was in the Christian scene. So we've kind of, between the two of us, we've kind of ran the gamut of his musical genres.
Yeah.
And through the Danny Goki thing, I met the folks that hired me to work with Scotty McCreery when he won American Idol. And then some of those folks were also working with Carrie Underwood. And that's how I got the phone call to come play with Carrie Underwood. When the position became open, of course they have the cattle call auditions, but in my experience, the majority of the way people are getting gigs is saying, well, you should call my friend, and that's exactly how the Carrie Underwood thing happened. I was working with Scotty McCreery, and the tour manager was a guy named Mike Childers, whose brother is Mark Childers, and Mark Childers is the band leader for Carrie Underwood.
Okay.
And so those brothers are talking, and Mark's saying, we got this guitar position coming up. And by the way, the guy that chose to leave was Sean Tubbs, in my opinion, one of the greatest sidemen Nashville has ever had. Just a little bit intimidating, by the way. And so Mark says, he's leaving. Who should I get? And Mike says, oh, you can give Matt a call. And so that's how that went. Mark says, hey man, do you want to come play in the Carrie band? And I was like, yes, I want to do that. Of course I want to do that. What are you talking about, Mark? So, that's how I started working with those folks, and it's been a great gig.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah. What are some differences that you've seen, and just ways that you prepare differently, things that other folks that perhaps are younger could see, like, okay, I'm doing this now, but eventually I need to get my gear in order to be able to hit that pro circuit. These are some things that happen.
Yeah, that's a great question. And what I've found, it's kind of surprising, is that it's hard to tell the amount of preparation necessary on different gigs. Like, it could be some huge gig and you show up and you didn't have to be as prepared, right? And then there's other small gigs where you show up and they're like, well, did you learn all the background vocals and all the choreography and you have everything set up? And I'm like, dude, this is a cover band. What are you talking about? Right? I have had those situations, so it would be a mistake to assume the level of preparation. You kind of have to give your best to everything if you want to make sure that you're showing up prepared. But on the Carrie thing, the way that we prepare for that is it really is built up in stages. It starts off just like, okay, learn the music. Okay, learn the background vocals. Okay. And then once the band is sounding good, then we're gonna work with Carrie, right? And then it goes up and up and up until at some point there's full dress rehearsal, lights, staging, all that stuff. So it's it just kinda starts small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, so
If I'm misremembering, let me know. But if I remember right, like a lot of the syncing, like even with your effects, once you get to that level, it's to the point where a lot of effect changes on your pedal board aren't even controlled by you anymore. It's like synced up enough to where, you could be on a different part of the stage and you're supposed to be taking a solo. And so, you're over there, but things automatically change, depending on the situation and choreography, where, stage positioning.
exactly, and one of the kind of downstream effects of that is that if you do not have a pedal board in front of you and you are not controlling your own effect changes, you don't have a volume pedal, you don't have a wah pedal, you don't have a tuner, and so everyone's walking around the stage with these headstock tuners because there's no tuning pedal in front of us, right? But it does create a serious production advantage in whenever they're doing the staging and they're saying, well, we need this musician over here for this moment. And you don't have to say, well, my pedal board's over there and I have to click my delay pedal on. Like there's none of that going on. So everything's already pre-programmed. So it definitely is more work in the beginning to set all that up. But as soon as the show starts, the tour is underway, then it is so much easier to not have to worry about that. Because I guarantee I would mess up pedal changes and have way too much distortion when it's a clean passage and things happen. So that kind of fixes that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, getting from to where you are from where you were, like we all have to start somewhere. And dude, there's so many things that happen behind the scenes, like just whether it's preparation, whether it's, just practice day in and day out for years, just to be able to feel competent on the guitar. Like, um, what, uh, what are some things that you did that no one ever saw that you feel like really have paid off here, has paid off over the years?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not the only sideman. It's an industry and it's a factory, right? There's hundreds of us just kind of doing different gigs just in Nashville. And I think that what the audience doesn't see, but they have to assume is going on is the amount of hours sitting at the desk holding a guitar, just learning all the parts. It's endless, it seems. And so a lot of the times, like you're playing for your main artist, but you're probably taking other gigs as well. And so you kind of have to do musical practice triage to say, okay, what's coming up next? What's most important? How much time do I have to devote to learning this part and this part? And it's very common that I'll get an email from a guy that I'm doing a bar gig with, and he's saying, "Hey, have you had a chance to write a chart for Jesse's Girl or some song?" And I'm thinking, your gig is in about 3 more weeks, and I have to play this major television show between now and then, so yours is not quite up on the docket yet. I will get to it, but we're not there yet.
There's a lot of relationship, management, right? Like, even
Mhm.
as a guitar player, even as a sideman, I mean, because relationships obviously, and I actually listened to an interview, before doing this, and, here, let me read this quote. You said, to the interviewer, "A good friend beats many acquaintances." And it's, you mentioned the Danny Goki gig, Maestro Lightford, is a good friend of mine. I've known him for, long time. And he was the one that pulled me in initially just temporarily because at the time I didn't want to be on the road. And, I wound up being on the road for a couple years,
Yeah.
with them. And, but it's because of that friendship that I got that opportunity kind of take me to a little bit of the nitty gritty.
Yeah, so networking in music, I mean, there's a lot of people that'll show up to a bar and just shake hands and hang out with people and do that sort of thing. But I've never done that. That's not really what I want to do where I want to hang out. And I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think that that's going to yield the results that I'm really after. But what I tell young guitar players that are asking me like, "Well, how do you do this?" I always tell them the same thing. Say yes to everything, okay? Because your network is a lot like a little tree, right? So you say yes and you get a little branch and you do that gig and you do your absolute best and you play with an artist. The management sees you, if the artist has management, and all the other people in the band. And then let's say the bass player says, "Oh, well, I'm doing this other thing and uh Josh sounded awesome, so I'm gonna call Josh on this one." So then another little branch happens, right? So at that point, You just wanna say yes to everything because you're trying to expand that network and get as as many branches in your little network tree as possible. Now, once you're a little further down the road, you've been doing it a while, then you can start saying, "Well, no, I do have to guard my time and my priorities of who I'm playing with and the projects that I'm working on," because after a certain amount of time, you say, "Well, it's just not really worth my time and effort." But in the beginning, yes to everything. I would always joke and say that if you're hoping to get a certain gig and you have 3 referrals, the gig is yours.
Yeah, dude.
Like, that's what I've seen.
What are some things that stick out to you when you work with someone? You like, oh, okay, well, they hit this, 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 and this. I definitely am going to recommend them now because they conducted themselves in this way.
So with drummers, um, if I don't notice them, I think they're great.
Mm.
If I'm able to do my job and focus on what I'm doing and I don't even think about it, and they just provide a pocket that I just kinda rest in and just play, I'm like, "Oh, oh, that was really good," you know?
Yeah.
But obviously, if they do something super cool and I kinda go, "Oh, that was cool," then that's all gravy, but, that's kinda my bare minimum is that I don't notice a drummer. If I get along with someone and then we align on a lot of different things, I'm thinking, "Oh, okay, I wouldn't mind spending days on end in the confines of a tour bus with this person. I think that would be a good time."
What are some things, just working with some of these major artists that you learned on the road that surprised you?
Well, I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but I always say that the Carrie gig is weird because she doesn't do anything low pressure. It's never like, "Oh, let's go play at this, small sort of venue," and, "Oh, it's not a big deal. It'll be totally fun and chill," you know? It can be fun, very rarely chill, you know? It's always like, "Okay, we're gonna go do this televised thing in front of 75,000 people, and there's an additional guest artist, and we're gonna practice for weeks just for this specific thing." I'm just like, "Oh my goodness." So, yeah, it's always high pressure, but I guess you would expect that with that sort of gig.
Well, speaking of pressure, is there a time when your faith got tested? Not necessarily with or without Carrie, but just in your career as a musician?
Tested faith, man, that's a big question. That's a big one right there. I feel like all of our faith is gonna be tested every day. We live in a broken world, and then sin is always gonna come into our lives and try to test us in that way. Um, but I think that my reputation and what people know about me, I don't really get hired on gigs where there's a whole lot of partying and infidelity and things like that going on. I just kind of get skipped over, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, and so, the Carrie gig is a pretty squeaky gig. She's a believer. It's an 8-person band, and we have 8 Christians in the band, and we're all keeping each other accountable, not necessarily rebuking one another, but there's an understanding of and an expectation. Like, it would be the wildest thing if someone were to step out on their marriage. That would be so unheard of, and amongst the 8 of us, I've never witnessed anyone come close to that. So, thankfully, not tested too much.
It kind of makes you proud to have a reputation like that. Obviously we have to stay humble. I'm not saying proud in like a prideful way. I just mean like, man, that's what we're shooting for. When we get some feedback like that and we see that people are seeing us differently, and we don't get some of those invitations, man, that's a job well done. And I would urge honestly anybody who is young and coming up, like if you are wondering to yourself, would this be good or bad for your reputation? Chances are you have your answer right there. It's probably if
Mhm.
you have to ask that question, it's
Yeah.
probably something you need to leave alone. I'm sure that you're being told all the time how good you are. Like, what are some things that you do to keep yourself in check and to stay humble?
So, a couple of things. I forgot who told me this. It might have been my mom. Mom, if it was you, I apologize. Someone came up to me after like a talent show in like middle school, and they're like, "Hey, you sounded really great." And of course, my response as a eighth grader is, "No, no, it wasn't that good. No, no, it wasn't that good." Right. So, as you mature and you get older, you learn to humbly accept a compliment and say, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. You made my day." Right. And so that's somewhat of a skill in itself. but we need to always be reminding ourselves that these are not our gifts. These are gifts on loan from our creator, right? So when someone says, "Hey, you were awesome," the response should be, "You know what? Yeah, God is good."
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
that should be the response.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times for me, that response that you mentioned of, "Oh, it wasn't that good," just kinda, it can come across as false humility because obviously it was good, like, we have to acknowledge that. But it's almost like someone's giving you a gift of a compliment, and to be like, "Oh, it wasn't that good," is basically saying, "No, you're wrong. You're giving me a gift. I don't want your gift,"
Right.
as well. That's maybe a different way to look at it, and yeah, just being thankful and encouraging, and then maybe asking a follow-up to them, like, "Hey, what got you into your love of music? Because obviously you're here, you're enjoying a show," like, and striking up a little conversation,
100%.
and you just don't know what that could lead to, even just a 30-second conversation of being a real human and
Yeah.
showing some love to somebody. Maybe they desperately needed that night, that interaction with you. And so that's cool stuff, man.
Yeah.
Um,
You were talking about the humility and how to deal with not letting your ego get too much, right? If you make as many mistakes on stage as I have, you get your ego in check for sure. But when I'm playing, it is this constant struggle, okay? If I get too far to one side, I'm guaranteed to mess up, right? So
mm,
we're on stage, heat of the moment. If I'm thinking, I don't belong here, I'm not good at all. I stink. What that's not what it was supposed to sound like, then I'm gonna mess up because I've lost my confidence and it takes a certain amount of confidence to do that job. And if I'm thinking, I'm having a good night, I'm unstoppable tonight, everything sounds awesome, I am so good, then I'm also guaranteed to mess up too, you know? So you kind of want to keep it right in the middle there.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree 100%.
Yeah.
What are some times when maybe you thought, I'm going to quit. I do not want to do this anymore, and what you learned from it?
I feel like I get those like all the time. Like you just described my career. My whole career is just a compilation of those examples. A couple of years ago, I started struggling with stage fright, and I had never really dealt with that in the past. So I was doing keto. All right, you need to know that. I know that's a weird thing to add into the story. So it was like I was doing keto, right? I would make a little mistake, and I would go, "Oh, that's not what I wanted." And then I would be a little more apprehensive about playing in the future. And because I was a little more apprehensive, then I'd be more prone to making a mistake. And it was this cycle that got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So much so that I was like, I don't want to get on stage. I don't want to play because I'm just going to mess up. And it's the worst feeling ever. And I mean, a lot of these mistakes, the things that I notice that no one else is going to notice, right? But it still helped to perpetuate this cycle that I was in. And so I tried everything. I tried our fiddle player calls it mindfulness. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I'm just trying not to mess up. But where you just try to calm down, you just go, all right, we're gonna chill out. And it's really hard to do when you're staring at the audience and the click is going. And it's like, all right, here it comes, play it exactly perfect right now. So I'm trying to just calm that in my head, in my spirit, right? And it culminated, like, the absolute peak, it culminated in my little church's Christmas concert, okay? We're playing The Little Drummer Boy by is it Christ the King? I don't remember. But we're playing Little Drummer Boy, and the guitar part is just 16th notes on one note. Din, 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 okay? And so everything drops out, and it's just me going din, 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 din. And the thing about 16th notes is that every human being on earth knows what that is supposed to sound like because it's the same thing consistently, right? So everything drops out, and it's just me, and like the chemical reactions in my body are just going through the roof. And I'm playing in a room and there's, I don't know, two or 300 people tops, right? And I can't feel my fingers. Like I can't even move them, right?
Oh
I'm just
man.
thinking, and I'm right on the edge of falling off and getting off time or just like clunking a note or something. And then my face goes numb, my teeth go numb. I'm like, what is happening right now? And then the drums come in with their part, and I'm like, oh, thank God. At least there's someone playing with me, and I'm not completely exposed, right? And so and it was, of course, it's a church service. So they're like, we're going to do a Saturday night. We're going to do a Sunday morning. We're going to do a Sunday evening, you know? And so this is the Saturday night, and I'm just full freak out. I'm watching all these YouTube videos, like, how do you fight stage fright? And, you know, it's nothing's really helping, you know? And I was trying to figure out what in the world is causing this. Like, what is the root issue that I'm having with stage fright? Right. And so I'm watching that Ryan Reynolds movie where he's the stunt man, right? And he's in this fight with another character. And he's like, "You have to eat carbs. Your brain runs on glucose." I'm sitting there, I look at my wife, I was like, "Is that my problem? I'm not eating enough carbs and sugar, and so
Oh my
therefore I'm not
goodness.
getting enough fuel in my brain, which is causing me to mess up, which is making me nervous about messing up." And so, Josh, I gotta tell you, it's just another problem that can be solved by cookies. So
Man, that's hilarious. That is so funny, man. What would you say to someone like that who's like dealing with stage fright and
yeah.
their diet's just fine?
And their diet's fine, and they have enough cookies and all kind of stuff. Um Here's the truth that we need to really understand and internalize, okay? We're musicians. We are for entertainment purposes only. We are not surgeons. And so if we make a mistake, lives are not changed. Like literally the worst thing that can happen is someone goes, you know, and we should just be so at ease knowing that it's not a big deal. It's a
Mhm.
big deal to us, but at the end of the day, it's really not a big deal.
Yeah, man. Absolutely true.
Mhm.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Now, I don't want, if I'm on a flight, the pilot to think that, right? There,
Exactly.
like you mentioned a surgeon, or a doctor,
Uh,
yeah, there are certain professions, but yeah, it's entertainment. And the truth is, honestly, that can make someone admitting mistake, laughing about it, that can draw you in and make you more endearing to fan bases, to it's something for the buddies to kind of rag you on
mhm.
the bus
Yeah,
afterward. And the
yeah.
truth is, you are there for a reason. Now, if you are making mistakes every time, multiple times, gig after
Then
gig,
you won't be there for a reason.
yeah, yeah, you won't be there, and there will be a reason, and yeah, you won't be there. So, uh, but yeah, man, just finding that balance, realizing it's not that big of a deal. It's important, man.
I think when you're at home and you're practicing, the correct mentality is, "This is extremely important. This matters. This is a big deal." Okay? But as soon as you hit the stage and you've done your correct preparation, that's the time to calm yourself down and say, "This is not a big deal." I think that's what kinda helped me.
Yeah, breathe, have fun, and the more you do it, the more you learn. Like the truth is, we're all going to mess up in a big way at some point,
Oh, it's inevitable.
and that's where the other pieces of ourselves, being a good hang, being someone who, is not prideful, just all these other things help us to keep the gig when maybe
Yeah.
we make up love like that.
Yeah. 2 pieces of advice for any musicians listening. One is you'd be surprised how effective just making yourself smile can be in terms of easing the nerves on stage, you know, and it's good, you know. And the other thing is be professional, okay? If someone in your band messes up, don't do this and just look at them real quick, okay? Don't be that guy, right? Okay.
I
Do
have
it.
to say, I've been guilty of that, and dude, it depends on the gig. You're absolutely right. If it's like a televised, like, yeah, you're just like nothing happened. It's all part of the show.
Yeah.
But there are some gigs, yeah, where maybe it's a little more relaxed, and I am on purpose looking and laughing and just, yeah, it's a lot of fun, but that's part of the brotherhood, just the family of being on the road, giving each other grief over mistakes as well.
These conversations I'd have with all these stories popping up, okay? We were doing the Cry Pretty tour, and they had this huge circular stage, right? And they had these lifts that would bring people up and down. And so you wanted to make sure that you were where you needed to stand if you were about to be on a lift that was moving up, right? And so there's a part of the show where it was Carrie in the middle and Ed Eason, who's the other electric guitar player, and he's on the left and I'm on the right. And I'm standing there in my spot and I kind of look over at Ed and he very discreetly kind of points and just kind of motions like a little more. And I look down and sure enough, I'm not standing on the lift. And so that would have been terrible if that point in the song comes up and the lifts go up and I kind of miss my train and I'm just
Oh,
looking
man.
up at where I should have been. So I was very thankful for a little hint from Ed.
Oh, man, that is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, we gotta look out for each other. That's so good of Ed to do that for you. Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure you've had some awesome experiences with Carrie and, the band Perry and Scotty McCreery and all that. Like, what's another gig that comes to your mind that you're just like, "Man, it's just a surreal moment."
Here's the funny thing about the Carrie gig is that she often plays with guest artists, you know? So if I'm doing the Carrie gig, there's other people that come in and I get to play with these other amazing icons of music. Dwight Yoakam, we played with Axl Rose, and then we did this Women of Country thing for the CMA Awards where it was just like tons of female artists, including Dolly Parton. So every time I go to Dollywood, I'm thinking, I got to play with Miss Dolly herself, you know?
Wow, that is so cool.
I I kind of include that in my when I'm looking back at my career and the artists that I've worked with that I was very happy to get to work with, you know? And even with the band Perry, we did a thing where it was the band Perry and Fall Out Boy.
Mm.
And it was pretty cool to play with those guys, like a totally different genre, right? And my nephew, he walks up to me and he says, "Uncle Matt, how come you never play with anyone cool like Fall Out Boy?" I said, "I did play with Fall Out Boy." He goes, "Yeah, but not really." He's
Wow.
hard to impress, you
So
know?
that's a high bar there.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, like, playing with them, but not actually with them. Yeah,
Well, you're
that's
not in
funny.
the band. I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
I know. I'm not in Fall
yeah.
Out Boy. Sorry."
Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah.
fun. Well, hey, I Fall Out Boy, if you ever hear this, invite Matt to, tag along on a tour and,
Yeah.
be your
I've
guitar
got a
player for a
nephew to
bit.
impress.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Alright?
yeah, so yeah, please, yeah. Well, hey, I wanna be conscious of your time. Let me just ask one more question, and then I'll let you go. I know you got family to tend to, you got a busy day yourself. Um, if you could go back in time, you're let's say you're 20 years old, what do you tell yourself at that point?
There'd be a long list. There would be a long list, okay? If I'm 20 years old, okay, I would go back in time and I would say, number 1, make sure you marry that Laura girl, okay? That's my wife's Laura. And I said, "Make sure," okay? Because she has been an unbelievable blessing since the day I met her. I would s I would say, don't worry about pedal boards. Just get an all-in-one unit and call it good, and then dial in your tones like they should be, and just move forward like that because they save your back and they're very consistent. So, I know there's the purists out there that are like, "No, you need a tube amp and tube amp and pedals are great." But for me personally and what I do, just give me an all-in-one digital solution. It's pretty effective. If I was going back to a very specific time, I would go back to, um, there was 2 concerts that we played. It was with Carrie in Hawaii. It was a couple years ago, and the shows were good. There was, like, one thing that I would like to go back and redo, you know, we're talking about those mistakes that we look back and kinda kick ourselves. So I would undo that mistake, and then what followed was the greatest vacation or trip of any kind of my life. So that'd be kind of a 2 for 1 thing. I could correct a musical error and have an awesome vacation in Hawaii with my wife.
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's awesome, yeah. Well, Matt, w what a guy. Like, there's a reason why you're where you are. Like, you so into others, not just, with skills, but just being yourself, man. You're funny, you lift up those you got energy. It's infectious. When I'm around you, I feel better about myself and about life, and I'm just so glad that you took the time to speak with me, and, yeah, unless you have anything else that you wanna share, how can folks, whether it's hiring you for a gig, finding out information, where should they go?
I mean, check out my Instagram. I try to be pretty good about responding to messages. So if there's any musicians out there that have a question or something, I'm happy to reach back out and send a message. But Josh, I want to thank you for having me on your podcast. You've been such a blessing to be friends with for so many years. So thank you, my friend.
Of course. Matt Reviere, everybody.